All right, so we are live here in Nirvana City, also known as Nevada City. And I'm Michael DiMartino, and I am the producer of the Water Protector Tour through my company, Golden Road Productions. And that would not be happen if it was not for the collaboration with my partner in the Sacramento River Watershed Project. We are an official nonprofit organization in collaboration with Soul Communications and Mauro Oliveira, who will be on the show in just a little bit. But I would like to welcome to the broadcast, all the way up from Sacramento, Mr. Bob Saunders.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for all the work that you do, and it's an honor and privilege to work with you. And this has been an extraordinary event.
Great, thank you. Well, it's an honor to have you here. We've been doing all this work from Zoom and phone calls over the last few months, so glad that we can be here and safely distanced in order to share a little bit more about our work with the Watershed Project, a little more about our work with the third year of Water Protector Tour. And not only that, we're not here just to chit chat or talk. We're here to give you conduits for advocacy and activism to get things done, whether you live in the Sacramento River watershed or wherever you live, that we're cranking out templates of ideas, activities, media, templates, and curriculums for you to get involved in. So we're really excited to, as we say back east, right, where the rubber hits the road.
Yep.
And I want to thank all the people making this broadcast possible. Again, Basil Childers and D Studio and Peter and all the crew at Hubcast, and really all the people that are in support to them and part of their organization. So Seeds Live. So thank you so much for your incredible work to make this what started off as a small drop of water as an idea called Voices of Water, which has just kind of become this whole excuse the pun, watershed moment of synergy, and had many other people coming on to collaborate. So before we really get into the discussion and we bring more on, we're going to share a little bit more about the Sacramento River Watershed Project via a video that was produced by one of our collaborators and media producers here in the Resilience Hub in Nevada City, Davin Skonberg. And I do want to say, I know it's very intense to have such incredible, dense information delivered over a small period of time, but we'll be able to have an archive of this so we can go through and assimilate all the different perspectives and voices. I'm actually still processing yesterday the message from the Mamos from the Kogi tribe of Colombia and what they said. It actually might even take me a lifetime to process. So before we have more talk, let's see some. We're pretty good eye candy. I don't think we're bad looking guys, but
too bad.
Let's go over to we're going to go over to some exciting media with creative energy arts, and we'll be back with more with Bob Saunders from the Sacramento River Watershed Project.
The Sacramento River Watershed Project is a nonprofit organization dedicated to preservation, education, and regeneration of our most precious resource, water. The organization works in a dozen counties in the watershed, ranging from the glacial waters of Mount Shasta to the unique estuary of the Sacramento River Delta. We are committed to focusing on three main issues: stopping and removing environmental toxins, including herbicides, pesticides, microplastics, and pharmaceuticals, working with decision makers to prevent mismanagement, and working to prevent privatization and the devastating impact to our communities and the environment. For more information, go to www.sacramentoriverwatershedproject.org or call 530-362-8264.
And back, just a quick piece of some media about the work that Bob and I have been doing, together over the last 3 years, but really over decades. And Bob more directly in his involvement with the California Guild, the Crunch Nestle Alliance, and lots of other things. So I think we have someone beaming in here, and it's another one of our. Oh, you look so relaxed. We want to welcome to the broadcast Mauro Oliveira, who is another producer, filmmaker, musician. He has a show on Pacifica Radio called Extinction Diaries. He's also one of the directors, along with Bob, of Soul Communications. So welcome to the broadcast.
That work out right? Yeah. That's who I am.
Yeah.
You can reach me at that email, mauro@signaloflove.org. There's my phone number and the Extinction Diaries. I just listened to Chris, the gentleman right before me, and he was talking about how he's not one of those doom and gloom activists. And my subject matter actually kind of is doom and gloom. And along with Dane Wigington, I heard his broadcast today, and I've been working with Dane for about 20 years, and we're not the life of the party. We never are. So that's just aside. Chris said that, there is a lot of hope, and there is a lot of hope for a lot of things, but I just want to remind people that there was a lot of hope for the Baiji dolphin. There was a lot of hope for the Chinese paddlefish, which lived for over 250 million years. And there was a lot of hope for the Yangtze River soft-shell turtle. Now, all three of those went in the last 12 years in the same river. So is there a lot of hope in that river? No. And I don't want people to think that we can punt this one more generation, because I'm 60 years old now. And so 3 generations have punted it to me. And one of my my leaders, one of my elders, Al Rojas, passed away. And so all the ones that told me, you're the ones we've been waiting for, most of them are gone now. And we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones they were waiting for. And so we can't punt this down the road. And the reason is we have passed tipping points that already make it doom and gloom and make things unstoppable. So we're going to be mitigating a lot in the realm of global warming. Now, what are we going to be able to save on the planet from extinction? That's wide open territory right now, because we can't honestly say we're going to save anything at this point. And let me point. Go ahead.
More. Before we get deep into it, can you give people a little bit about your background so they know the credentials? This isn't just your opinion.
Sure.
Your credentials and the work that you've been doing, so people can get to know you more and what you bring to the table in discussion.
Sure. I've been the executive director of Soul Communications, Signal of Love, for 24 years. I founded the organization, and we started working with Native people, bringing them supplies, and most of them were resisting forced relocations by the United States, specifically at Big Mountain. And through them, I was dragged into, because they became my elders, I was dragged into different battles over at the Nevada test site. And I was just there the other day, interestingly, about 4 or 5 days ago. I was where they detonated 1,000 US bombs, above ground, below ground. And I've been passed from one project to another, from the Medicine Lake defense, which we were about to go to the Supreme Court when the government finally dropped it, to working with Bob at Nestle, shutting down Monsanto and that. But what I've really concentrated my efforts on was knowing about extinctions. And I've been following them for 30 years, tracking them, understanding them. And even going back before I was doing that, because in the 1970s, humans began to really keep the data. So there's a baseline that all extinction conversations go to, and that is, well, back since 1970, we have lost this much on planet Earth. And since 1970, we've lost approximately half of generalized across the board, 60% of plankton, half of the amphibians, half of the reptiles. Now, some things have surged, but those are usually called, or more like predator species or invasive species. But the iconic species like the rhinos and the elephants and all that, you can see what's happening. We're losing an elephant every 15 minutes. And we only have 300,000, we lose 35,000 a year. I mean, the numbers add up to a decade. They're telling us now that we have till the end of this decade to preserve what we can of the coral. And so they're experimenting with coral, because the way things are going, we will not be able to preserve any of the freshwater coral. And this isn't, you know, like we're going to find a fix to it, because at this point we have to assume that we're not. We got to keep trying to, but by assuming we're not, we're going to try to develop scientific species that will grow in deeper water. And there's a reason for that, and it's related to ocean acidification. So my background is in just researching. I've been working with the studying the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature, which is the red book of extinctions. These are the guys who count it, the World Wildlife Fund. They count it. But all anybody has to do anymore is put in the word extinction in Google and then hit news. And if you do that every couple of weeks, you're going to see things come up that are just going to shake your head. You're, oh my God. And I mean, I gave you a few examples of things that have gone, but you know, we lost the Spix macaw, which was in the movie Rio. You remember that? All the kids loved that macaw. And in the movie, it was going extinct. Well, it did go extinct about 4 years after that in the wild. Of the gorilla populations, we have one gorilla that we're down underneath 200. The Javaran rhino, there's about 60. The Western black rhino we lost in 2006. We've lost 3 rhinos in about 12 years. Now, normally you would lose 2 rhinos if humans weren't around. You would lose 2 rhinos in about 10 million years apart. And we've lost 3 in a little over a decade. So we're on an exponential curve. It's called the 6th great extinction. There's been 5 others. And many scientists who study this are saying that we're actually losing species faster than any other extinction. And that includes the one that took out the dinosaurs. And now how they get to all that, I don't know, and I'm not an expert in that. But I can bring those numbers to the board to tell people that we have to find solutions. Did you want to take it for a second before I go on? Because I can go on all day.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of people who watch, you know, talking about rhinos and birds and even nature, what's happening with whether you believe it's natural occurring cycle or human-induced, or a kind of a symbiosis of both of them through climate change and the wildfires that are happening right now, the droughts and all of these things. So sometimes when people hear about animals, it's hard for them to connect. But let's bring it home to the human population. Let's look at the colonial agenda that's been perpetrated on so many people, starting with the indigenous cultures, which is now the voice and the conscience of nature, which is now spreading into all populations everywhere around the world. So let's bring it home to the human population, because I really want people to own their part of the responsibility of what's happening, hopefully get them inspired to action with some solutions and what can they do. So can you share a little bit about the decimation or the impact of what's happening to human populations?
Sure. Well, the human population explosion is going on, but behind the scenes, the human sperm count is reflecting exactly what we see from the 1970s till now. The human sperm count has done exactly what across the board has happened with life. And that's both plants and animals, by the way. Plants are suffering the same extinction fate as animals. It's the web of life, and it is indigenous thinking. It's indigenous thinking is exactly what we need to save everything. And I just can't believe the patience of the indigenous leaders that I've worked with over the years, how gently, you know, they welcome us into their lives and welcome us into their teachings, into their ceremonies. and also try to hand us the responsibility of life on earth. But it's the same responsibility that you see in the Bible, that we are stewards, which you can find in the front end and the back end, that our job is simple. We're supposed to take care of the planet. And the indigenous thinking is what would save everything. And most indigenous prophecies speak of a time when other nations or other races will come back to indigenous people and ask them for the answers. Well, we're getting those answers now. And thanks to technology and thanks to you guys, we're able to produce that longer. But the question is, are people willing to sacrifice what it's going to take to implement indigenous thinking? And is this kind of like what you were talking about?
Absolutely. I hate to say it, but I think we have to appeal to people's selfish self-interest to really drive the point home. And again, part of this whole opportunity of Voices of Water to have people share all the different perspectives, from the indigenous to the culture and religious and spiritual to the scientific, to those who are dealing with solutions, those who are activists, those who are ambassadors, those who are stewards and guardians, and those who are activists. So I want to go over a little bit because we still haven't quite got our teeth into what Bob brings to the table and his collaboration and history with you. And then where are we going from here? Like, I want to bring action items to the table. People who are watching this, what can you do? So let's have Bob share a little bit about his water activism and other work, please.
Well, one of the things that Mauro and I, definitely see is that hope is not enough. You can't hope your way through this. You have to take action. And how do you take action? Action really begins wherever you are. I mean, you do something. You find a problem and you say, okay, it's a problem. Don't let it overwhelm you. You need to do something. It doesn't matter if it's a basic beginning, and then that leads to another step, which leads to another step. Bring your friends, bring your contacts, talk to people, and get them to do something. That's essentially how we would have people show up for events and shutdowns and things like that. Roll up your sleeves, always. Many of us, our motto is chop wood, carry water, because there's never anything that we ask anybody else to do that we ourselves are not willing to do or that we don't do. I mean, must be humble with when you bring this. Egos out, leave them out the door. But it's really important work. The problem that I see, and I'm sure Mauro probably, I don't want to speak for him, but probably feels the same way, is the fact that we have a multitude of people, many organizations, environmental organizations, everything, tackling one issue at a time. We don't have time to do that. Maybe 100 years ago we could have done it that way, but right now, as Dane was talking this morning, he was using the term climate, he talked about climate change, but it's really, what we're really talking about is climate collapse. Our universe is collapsing. Our Earth is falling apart because we, who were giving the job as stewards by birth, or maybe even before, are not doing our job. Some of us are, but I'm not even going to go there. But all of us have to be.
And doing our job can be as easy as stop using harmful cosmetics.
Yeah.
So I'm literally calling you out right now. If you go into your house and you have any sort of cosmetics with any sort of inorganic substances that you wouldn't drink, you know what? Get rid of it right now. If you have any cleaning products in your house right now, you know what? Get off your ass and throw it out or recycle it or put it into the appropriate way of disposing of it. If you're using inorganic landscaping material, anything to make your yard beautiful that is decimating the pollinator population, which is tied to our food and water security, you know what? Stop using it right now. If you're doing other things to contribute, buying microplastics, I'm going to ask everyone right now to boycott Crystal Geyser, who not only is stealing 500 million bottles of water a day out of the aquifer at the headwaters of Mount Shasta, but the majority of the profit and that water is not even seen by people in the United States. Stop buying plastic. and stop pouring your pharmaceuticals down the drain and contributing to the mental health crisis that's happening because these things are in our water. So I'm going to put out a challenge to all of you right now to be part of the solution. It takes simple things. Not everybody can go out and be an activist, but at least be an advocate and be an activist in your own home. And if that doesn't strike a chord, I want you to take a moment and look at your children and then your children's children, your grandchildren, and the 7 generations that are being poisoned and affected because of your lack of acknowledging the truth and living in a world of comfort and convenience. Because here in the United States, most of us enjoy a incredibly comfortable lifestyle that the majority of the rest of the world suffers and pays for. So again, I'm very passionate and intense about this, and I'm calling myself out. I'm trying as much as possible to live a non-toxic life. It's really hard to get off the petroleum boob driving a car, but all these solutions, all the technologies, all these things are starting to happen. And we can also clean up the mess. Mycological remediation, biochar, the solutions, cover crops, bringing back pollinators. So again, we have to change today. Your thoughts, Mauro?
Hey, Bob, the first time we took down, took down Monsanto and Davis, how many people were there? 400?
What do you have, 70 to 150, somewhere between that?
Yeah, how big did we get? Do you remember?
I think at one point we got as big as probably 200 to 250, and then it shrunk from there.
Okay, but it shrank while we were winning, right?
Yeah, at the Capitol when we had a rally, we had 1,400 people there, and we had a speaker from the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah,
people went on a march, and when
this is my point.
800 people.
It shrinks while we're winning, and it makes no sense.
I know.
And I want to go back to indigenous thinking for a second, because I have a lot of friends who go, "Oh, I'm going to pray about it." Well, first of all, if you haven't been on your knees crying for what's happening on planet Earth right now, if you haven't been on your knees and cried, you don't even know what I'm talking about when I say that we're in a 6th grade extinction. And if you don't feel it that much, you need to take the water away for 4 days and go Vision Quest. Find out what that is. Find an indigenous leader and say, "Hey, I need a Vision Quest." Put some numbers in your head before you go in Vision Quest, and do that. Take the water away, and you will come out a warrior, because all of us need to be activists. Michael just said, if you're not an activist, no, we all need to be activists now. We're past the tipping point.
Or if you live in a sub-equatorial culture that you have to walk a mile or a day for water, that could be a very motivating factor when people realize that our comfort and convenience, people turn on the tap and just think it magically appears.
Yeah, and one other thing that's really important that people completely forget, if they don't want to think, if they don't care about themselves, they better start thinking about their children. Their children will see animals that we've seen for years, whether we, any of us lived on a farm or visited a farm or saw in, National Geographic programs and stuff. Many of those are gone. So they'll have to watch, where you could see National Geographic, but then if you went to Africa, you would see it in the wild. Now, and for years to come, all they're going to be able to see is things that once existed, but no longer exist. And I don't think that's the kind of gift that anybody has a right to, or a legacy to leave their children. You leave a huge void there. And it's, in many cases, sadly, I hate to say this, but it's true, and you said people should be on their knees crying. We have helped create that void through inaction, through not pressuring the powers that be to make changes, and it's the same thing. I go, I've gone to Starbucks before, and they now have these wonderful plastic caps on the lids that's made of number 1 or number 2, and so it's recyclable, if you could find a place to recycle, rather than use straws. But what have they done? If you got a plastic cup, it's made of number 5 that's not recyclable, and it's more plastic content than the other one. I said something to the people that I have to write to the president of that, and see.
Well, Bob,
you know,
yeah. Greenwashing.
Well, yeah.
It seemed like a environmentalist is very sexy and popular, and we have to scrape away the veneer. And there's very few companies, multinational companies and franchises that don't put profit over people.
Oh yeah, and they're using the language, the terminology of the environmentalists. They've co-opted that at least for 20 years or so, and people are easily snookered into believing that they care. Those companies care.
Are you guys aware of what's happening with the manatee right now in Florida? Have you heard? They lost 7 to 8%. They lost 7 to 8% of the total state population in just 60 days in January and February, and it's still going on. And they don't really have a grip on it, although they see that there is no seagrass this year. They also see that the pollution, the E. coli, is coming out of the ground because the water is coming up and everybody's septic tanks are all near the rivers. Wow, what a problem. But I want to say this about Florida. Florida has more money than God. And they have more activists over there than I've seen growing and growing. Year after year, these river activists are now into tens of thousands per river. And they can't stop it. And they still can't stop it. Yeah.
Right.
I'm thinking maybe the manatees, maybe they have to get a COVID test. Maybe it's not anything with the environment. Maybe they just got the COVID. Is that possible?
They're starving. There's no seagrass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to bring some brevity and lightness to this because, again, there's so many. It's interesting because with your Extinction Diaries, I know I worked with a lot of people who used to be with the Green Party, and a lot of them went on to create something called Extinction Rebellion. And a lot of these people are grandmothers and soccer moms who are seeing what's happening with their children's health and what's happening with the environment. And they're saying enough is enough. So this isn't a bunch of radical activists and hippies and counterculturalists and peaceniks. This is actually a movement that has been ignited and is starting, just like with Kathleen Halal and non-toxic communities and Zen Honeycutt with Moms Across America. A big part of it is the awakening of the women to take back their power in that indigenous model of how decisions have been made, not by the patriarchy, not by some a machoistic, misogynistic, narcissistic, orange-skinned person who claims himself emperor, but by coming back into the circle where the women's voices are an essential part of the dialogue that needs to start happening in the roundtables to come back to the feminine understanding, come back into right relationship with nature.
You know, we've had some really grand opportunities in the last 20 years to pull this together. I'm going to skip over Occupy, but that was one of them. And I go to Standing Rock. The reason why, in essence, we lost at Standing Rock, but we started the fires of new battles, new resistance to battles. But the reason why we lost at Standing Rock is because America let us down. This was the opportunity to not only back up the environment, but to back up the First Nations for the wrongs that have been done by letting them lead this moment. And we cannot afford to let that happen again. And it's the same thing. It's always strength in numbers. If people would just show up, we will get this done.
Yeah.
And I want to remind people too, who, again, the people who I'm going to pray about it. I'm right with you. Believe me, I can do it. I love ceremony, but I got to remind people that there was a time when people were told to believe that the ghost shirts, Wovoka's ghost shirts, would stop the bullets.
Right.
And they all ended up dead.
Right.
So we have to have action and not just prayer. If we bring the two together, we have the most sacred of ceremonies, sacred action.
Yep.
Great. Well, Mauro, as you know, we appreciate all your work. decades of serving indigenous communities who are the original water protectors. And again, many of us come from other parts of the world. We were migrated here, our ancestry, our families. So I know back with my ancestors in Italy, and many of them were farmers, and they were water protectors also. So we all come from the idea of we're all indigenous, we're all connected to the land, we're all water protectors, but I do want to acknowledge the original water protectors here in North America. And like you said, how Standing Rock reignited a flame, and it got it into the mass consciousness and actually into the corporate media, started to even talk about what was happening. So I just want to thank you for all your amazing work. We want to thank you and Bob for Soul Communications helping to. What's that?
Both of you guys, thank you. And I know, Michael, that you and I heard you mention Thomas Binyaka the other day, Saturday, and yeah, we've touched a lot of the same old people's wrinkles, and wow, it's really good to know you, brother. Both of you. I mean, I love both of you. Thank you.
You too. You too. So a big shout out to Soul Communications. Also, Bob and I working with you with the Sacramento River Watershed Project. And I do want to say that if you can't get rid of your toxic beauty products, your toxic household cleansers, if you can't stop using toxic landscaping products, which affect your health and the health of everyone in your community, if you're addicted to plastic, if you're addicted to pharmaceuticals and you can't deviate that lifestyle and you've made your decisions, you know, the Hopi say one hearts or two hearts. One hearts try to bring the spiritual, mental, and physical realities together, where two hearts are torn between their deeper spiritual values of what they know is right and how they have played into this architecture of this consumeristic based design that's made to basically turn people into profit-making machines. Then what you can do is you can go to Sacramento River Watershed Project, click on support, and you can make a donation. Even if it's just sacrificing a week of coffee or cappuccinos or going to a fancy restaurant one time, if everybody watching that did that, we would have enough fuel and resources to glide through this water protector tour 2012 this year. Sure. So in just a moment, we're going to go over to World Water Law, which is actually Shelley and Jan have created this as a idea of global ethics around water. It's not a law or a litigation, but it's a way to think about water law as a system of ethics in relationship to water and to the natural world. So again, thank you so much. And before we go to the video, I'm just going to refer over to Bob Saunders to wrap up this segment, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with Kevin Danaher, co-founder of the Green Festival and Resilience Swami aficionado, and just a wealth of knowledge. So, Bob.
Yes, just as I said earlier, it's about starting wherever you are. Start with one action step. You know, use vinegar and water to kill weeds. You don't need, you know, glyphosate. You don't need Roundup. I mean, you know, and really, we all have a responsibility. We all can shape what's sold in the store. We have the power of our dollar. If we don't buy it, they won't make it. And, you know, we can have them put on the shelves bottles of vinegar replacing bottles of Roundup, because more people want vinegar to kill weeds, and vinegar has multi-purpose uses. But it's that simple. I mean, it sounds kind of funny in a way, but it's really that simple. You know, you start in your home. You start in, you know, plant the equivalent of what they call a victory garden. Your own vegetables. Grow your own vegetables. You know, they will taste far differently than anything you could ever buy in a store. But do something. We all have a duty and a responsibility. It doesn't have to be heavy-weighted on our minds, but when you do something, you will create a sense of joy and spirit within you that you can share with other people, and you get them to do it, and then you connect on that basis. Thank you all for being here.
And we want to say, stop the proposed Delta Tunnel project that will decimate Northern California, the wildlife, the environment, and will destroy the agricultural industry and the water that makes California such a unique environment. So stop the Delta Tunnel. And in a few minutes after World Water Law, we'll see a little video for a documentary that Bob and I are producing. And we'll be back with Kevin Danaher. So again, thanks for your patience, Kevin. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with much more of Voices of Water.